Visual Basic.NET is a multi-paradigm, high-level programming language, implemented on the .NET Framework. Microsoft launched VB.NET in 2002 as the successor to its original Visual Basic language. Along with Visual C, it is one of the two main languages targeting the .NET Framework. Microsoft currently supplies two main editions of IDE for developing in VB.NET, Microsoft Visual Studio 2013, which is commercial software, and Visual Studio Express Edition 2013, which is free of charge. The command line compiler, VBC.EXE, is installed as part of the freeware .NET Framework SDK. Mono also includes a command line VB.NET compiler. Syntax: VB.NET has the following syntax. Statements can terminate with keywords such as end if, instead of using s to group statements. Statements can also be terminated with a new line, instead of semicolons. Variables are both assigned and compared using an equals sign. Round brackets are used with arrays, both to declare them and to get a value at a given index in one of them. Examples: the following is a very simple VB.NET program, a version of the classic Hello World example created as a console application. The effect is to write the text Hello, World to the command line. Each line serves a specific purpose, as follows. This is a module definition, a division of code similar to a class, although modules can contain classes. Modules serve as containers of code that can be referenced from other parts of a program. It is common practice for a module in the code file, which contains it, to have the same name. However, this is not required, as a single code file may contain more than one module and/or class definition. This is the entry point where the program begins execution. Sub is an abbreviation of subroutine. This line performs the actual task of writing the output. Console is a system object, representing a command line interface and granting programmatic access to the operating system's standard streams. The program calls the console method writeLine, which causes the string passed to it to be displayed on the console. Another common method is using MSG-box. This piece of code is a solution to Floyd's triangle. Comparison with the classic Visual Basic. Whether Visual Basic.NET should be considered as just another version of Visual Basic or a completely different language is a topic of debate. There are new additions to support new features, such as structured exception handling and short-circuited expressions. Also, two important data type changes occurred with the move to VB.NET. Compared to VB6, the integer data type has been doubled in length from 16 bits to 32 bits, and the long data type has been doubled in length from 32 bits to 64 bits. This is true for all versions of VB.NET. A 16-bit integer in all versions of VB.NET is now known as a short. Similarly, the Windows Forms GUI editor is very similar in style and function to the Visual Basic form editor. The things that have changed significantly are the semantics from those of an object-based programming language running on a deterministic, reference-counted engine based on COM to a fully object-oriented language backed by the .NET Framework, which consists of a combination of the common language runtime and a far larger class library. The increased breadth of the latter is also a problem that VB developers have to deal with when coming to the language, although this is somewhat addressed by the My feature in Visual Studio 2005. The changes have altered many underlying assumptions about the right thing to do with respect to performance and maintainability. Some functions and libraries no longer exist. Others are available, but not as efficient as the native .NET alternatives. Even if they compile, most converted VB6 applications will require some level of refactoring to take full advantage of the new language. Documentation is available to cover changes in the syntax, debugging applications, deployment and terminology. Comparative examples: the following simple examples compare VB and VB.NET syntax. Each example creates a Hello World message box with an OK button. VB6. VB.NET. Both Visual Basic 6 and Visual Basic.NET automatically generate the sub and end sub statements when the corresponding button is clicked in Design View. Visual Basic.NET will also generate the necessary class and end class statements. the developer need only add the statement to display the Hello World message box. All procedure calls must be made with parentheses in VB.NET, whereas in VB6 there were different conventions for functions and subs. The names Command 1 and Button 1 are not obligatory. However, these are default names for a command button in VB6 and VB.NET respectively. In VB.NET, the handles keyword is used to make the sub button 1 click a handler for the click event of the object button 1. In VB6, event handler subs must have a specific name consisting of the object's name, an underscore, and the event's name. There is a function called MSG-box in the Microsoft Visual Basic namespace which can be used similarly to the corresponding function in VB6. There is a controversy about which function to use as a best practice. Some programmers prefer to do things the .NET way, since the framework classes have more features and are less language-specific. Others argue that using language-specific features makes code more readable or integer instead of system.int32. In VB 2008, the inclusion of by-val sender as object, by-valley as event args has become optional. The following example demonstrates a difference between VB6 and VB.NET. Both examples close the active window. VB6. VB.NET. The CMD prefix is replaced by the BTN prefix, conforming to the new convention previously mentioned. Visual Basic 6 did not provide common operator shortcuts. The following are equivalent: VB6. VB.NET. Versions, succeeding the classic Visual Basic version 6.0, the first version of Visual Basic.NET debuted in 2002. As of 2014, 7 versions of Visual Basic.NET are released. 2002, the first version, Visual Basic.NET, relies on .NET Framework 1.0. The most important feature is managed code, which contrasts with the classic Visual Basic. 2003, Visual Basic.NET 2003 was released with .NET Framework 1.1. New features included support for the .NET Compact framework and a better VB upgrade wizard. Improvements were also made to the performance and reliability of .NET IDE and runtime. In addition, Visual Basic.NET 2003 was available in the Visual Studio.NET Academic Edition, distributed to a certain number of scholars from each country without cost. 2005, after Visual Basic.NET 2003, Microsoft dropped NET from the name of the product, calling the next version Visual Basic 2005. For this release, Microsoft added many features intended to reinforce Visual Basic.NET's focus as a rapid application development platform and further differentiate it from C, including Edit and Continue feature, Design Time Expression Evaluation, a pseudo namespace called My, which provides easy access to certain areas of the .NET framework that otherwise require significant code to access, dynamically generated classes. Improved VB-TO-VB.NET Converter, a using keyword, simplifying the use of objects that require the dispose pattern to free resources, Just My Code feature, which hides boilerplate code written by the Visual Studio.NET IDE in system library code during debugging, data source binding, easing database client-server development, to bridge the gaps between itself and other .NET languages. This version added generics, partial classes, a method of defining some parts of a class in one file and then adding more definitions later. Particularly useful for integrating user code with auto-generated code, operator overloading and nullable types, support for unsigned integer data types commonly used in other languages. Visual Basic 2005 introduced the is-not operator that makes if X is not Y equivalent to if not X is Y. It gained notoriety when it was found to be the subject of a Microsoft patent application. 2008, Visual Basic 9.0 was released along with .NET Framework 3.5 on November 19, 2007. For this release, Microsoft added many features, including a true conditional operator, if, condition as Boolean, true apart, false apart, to replace the if function. Anonymous types, support for LINQ, lambda expressions, XML literals, type inference, Extension methods, 2010. In April 2010, Microsoft released Visual Basic 2010. Microsoft had planned to use dynamic language runtime for that release but shifted to a co-evolution strategy between Visual Basic and sister language C to bring both languages into closer parity with one another. Visual Basic's innate ability to interact dynamically with CLR and COM objects has been enhanced to work with dynamic languages built on the DLR such as Iron Python and Iron Ruby. The Visual Basic compiler was improved to infer line continuation in a set of common contexts, in many cases removing the need for the underscore line continuation character. Also, existing support of inline functions was complemented with support for inline subs as well as multi-line versions of both sub and function lambdas. 2012, Visual Basic.NET 2012 was released along .NET Framework 4.5. Major features introduced in this version include asynchronous programming with async and await statements, iterators, call hierarchy, caller information, global keyword and namespace statements. 2013, Visual Basic 2013 was released .NET Framework 4.5.1 and Visual Studio 2013 but did not include new language features. Cross-platform and open-source development. The creation of open-source tools for VB.NET development has been slow compared to C. Although the Mono development platform provides an implementation of VB.NET-specific libraries and a VB.NET 8.0 compatible compiler written in VB.NET, as well as standard framework libraries such as Windows Forms GUI library. Sharp Develop and Mono Develop are open-source alternative IDEs. See also, Microsoft Visual Studio Express, comparison of C and Visual Basic.NET, Visual Basic for applications, Microsoft Small Basic, comparison of programming languages, references. Further reading. External links, Visual Basic Developer Center, Microsoft Visual Basic Express, the Visual Basic Team blog.